All right. Have you taken a selfie in our photo booth? If you haven't, head on over there. A lot of people have already done it, and we want to make sure we get your smile and see you as well. And if you've already taken a selfie, why not take a second or a third? We'd love to see those too. Get to know your fellow CleftCon participants by joining a video room. This is a way to connect, to engage with each other, and most importantly, to inspire others and to be inspired by your fellow participants who are here as well. Introduce yourself to the CleftCon community with a post in community chat. So if you haven't done that already, go ahead, jump in, let us know where you're coming in from and what your thoughts are, how amazing this has been so far. Now, some of you have been worried. You've mentioned, hey, I can't go to all the sessions. That's okay. We got you covered. Go to the sessions that you want to visit today. And what's going to happen tomorrow on Sunday is replay day. So tomorrow, starting at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, so make that adjustment based on where you are in the country. Starting at noon, we're going to have replay for the entire day. So anything that you've missed, anything that you want to hear again, you want more inspiration, you want to be more empowered, it's going to be here for you. All right. So not to worry. And if you haven't started collecting passcodes and points to win the special Smile Train swag bag, click on Join the Game tab and you can learn more there. Last question. Have you answered the Cleft Con World Cloud questions yet? We want to hear from all of you there too. So visit the page, add your voice, and then check out what other participants are answering as well. You might be right in alignment and you might have very, very different ideas. And so that's what we want to capture. All right, so we're now going to hear from speakers who really get it. And while we know that every cleft story is unique, people with clefts have certain experiences that others simply cannot understand. And no matter where you are on your cleft journey, it can be incredibly meaningful to hear from someone who's been where you're at, been in your shoes, and they're now on the other side of this journey. So these folks are who we want to share with you now. These three speakers are going to inspire you with how they are changing the world. All right, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name's Beth. I was born with a unilateral cleft lip and palate. Growing up, I found that the hardest part of my cleft journey wasn't the physical side with all the operations and braces, it was the psychological side, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. So it's been quite an emotional roller coaster. So starting from the beginning, when I was a baby, I honestly can't remember having my cleft, and I didn't really have any feelings about it. I was just being a baby. But for my parents, it was a total shock. They had no idea I was going to be born with a cleft lip and palate. So of course they knew that my operations to repair my lip and palate were for the best, but of course they felt some concerns and they were quite worried about watching their newborn go through surgery, and obviously they were aware that my future might not be quite so straightforward. As I got older, I was pretty oblivious to my cleft. I didn't really think about my appointments more than a child might a dentist appointment. My parents completely normalised every time I'd have to miss a bit of school to go to the hospital. I didn't really think about my cleft negatively, and in fact, when I was about 8, I had a worksheet that I had to complete whilst being at school, and it was something along the lines of you had to say, what makes me special? And to that, I answered my nose. So I obviously knew that I had my cleft and that my nose was a bit different, it was a bit flat and a bit wonky, but when I was 8, it made me special. Didn't make me an outsider, didn't make me weird, didn't make me feel embarrassed or ashamed. And it was actually something to recognise and to celebrate. Unfortunately, as I got older, those feelings started to change, and as teenagehood came along, so did feeling self-conscious and anxieties about my appearance just grew, which totally destroyed my self-esteem, my internal self-confidence, and I got to the point where I hated myself because of my cleft. My key fear was of being judged. Judged for the way that I looked before anyone had got the chance to actually get to know the real me. And you know, my parents used to say, if someone judges you on the way you look, they're not worth getting to know anyway. But to me, at 15, when all you want to do is fit in and for people to get to know you and you're just trying to get to know yourself, it felt so unfair and I felt really isolated. I was desperate for people not to notice my cleft. So I almost pretended that I didn't have it. I felt this huge pressure to prove that I was everything someone without a cleft was, and that it wouldn't define me or hold me back. You know, I was terrified of being known as, oh, that girl with the weird nose, or the girl who speaks funny. I wanted to be known as the girl who does drama, or the girl who's really confident, or the girl who asks a million questions in class. I was so worried someone would notice my cleft, and any time someone would give a double take or a double glance, all those insecurities would come bubbling to the surface, and I would just think, oh no, they realise I've got a cleft, I'm now going to be isolated, I'm now an outsider, and they're going to write me off because they've seen that I'm different. Not wanting to acknowledge my cleft also meant that I didn't want to engage with any support, because the reason I'd want support was because of my cleft, and then that would mean accepting that my cleft existed. You know, attending a day like today when I was 15 would have been so helpful. It would have shown me that I wasn't alone, I wasn't an outsider, there were loads of really cool, great people who also just happened to be born with a cleft. Unfortunately, I just couldn't see that if I could accept my cleft, that it's fundamentally a part of who I am, and that accepting it doesn't then mean I'm defined by it. It just means I've got a cleft. But my cleft made me really feel overwhelmingly different. I thought I looked ugly, I felt ashamed, I felt lucky if someone wanted to be seen with me, if someone wanted to be my friend, and then it meant that they would be seen with me in the playground. I would just see it as some sort of extra kindness. I would feel really self-conscious of any photo of myself, especially if it was side on, because of the way that my nose was, it was incredibly droopy. And I would just feel this immense pressure and feeling and sense of helplessness that I couldn't do anything about it. And what feels especially difficult with a cleft is that it feels like everybody else can hide their insecurities, they can hide what makes them feel vulnerable. But with a cleft, the thing that made me feel vulnerable was my face. And I can't hide that. So I'm shown 24/7, whether I like it or not, whether I'm feeling brave one day or self-conscious another. If someone pointed out my face, my difference, I literally had no defence, because they were right. My face is different. And at that time, I just thought, okay, you've noticed I'm different and I can't get away from that. There's nothing that I can do to make you see that I'm like you, that I'm, for want of a better word, normal. So, speaking of this feeling of helplessness and it being something that you can't change, everyone has different treatment plans, but for me, my treatment team told me that I needed to be fully grown before I could have my later on surgery, which did reconstruct my nose and my lip and change the structure of my face, which is what I felt I really needed. So on one hand, this was great. It was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was, we can do something about this because that's what I wanted. But then on the other hand, I was being told it would get better, but it just won't get better yet. And when you're 15 and you feel so isolated and you're basically being told, oh, it will get better, it'll be worth the wait, you've just got to hang on in there. But right now, you've got to live with it being really rubbish and there's nothing you can do about it. And when actually, you know, I was really lucky, and actually one of the high moments of my cleft is having such a supportive network of true friends and such supportive, loving family. But, you know, even them, you know, they haven't got the same difference that I've got. And while they're being really supportive, they still don't get it. And having those years of just being told to wait just it can just feel really demoralising, and it can just feel so helpless while you're going through this. And another thing, which didn't help when I was a teenager, was that because of the way that I felt about myself and the way that I felt about my cleft, on the handful of occasions someone did say something that wasn't very nice, or an unkind comment was said, or I was going through the school corridor and someone would mutter something not very nice and under their breath, I would immediately believe them. I would think, you're the only person who is mean enough to actually say the truth. And my friends and family were just being nice. Because ultimately, if someone was saying something that wasn't very nice, I would think, yeah, that's right, because that's how I felt about myself. What they said aligned with how I felt. And because I didn't have that self-esteem about my cleft, I just instantly believed them, rather than believing the people who knew me and loved me for years, and anything kind they would say, I'd think, well, that's what you think, that's not the truth, we're just being nice. So I was just in, on so many different angles, so many different ways and layers and things which would come out in different moments. It was just a real difficult period growing up with my cleft psychologically. So it really was quite a roller coaster growing up. And everyone will have a different ride with their cleft, with different ups and downs. And while I did have quite a tough time as a teenager, my cleft did help me find true friends, and it's given me empathy with those who are also facing difficulties, whatever they may be. Since we're all on different rides with clefts, different things are going to help us find this place of self-acceptance. And for me, overall, that was surgery. And when I had my nose surgery when I was 20, my life changed. For the first time, I could see myself clearly. And while my nose is not stereotypically perfect, you might be able to see here, it's not symmetrical, it's not exactly, as somebody else might expect it to be. To me, I love it. It's completely transformed my world. I can see myself clearly. And what I was saying a moment ago about how you can believe those horrible things when you don't have that self-confidence. Well, now, if anyone said anything, I'd be like, cool, okay, well, that's what you think, but hey, that's just not true, just my face, and I love it. I really, I'm so, so proud of my cleft and the things that I've been through. And I know how hard it can be. And I know how isolating, I know how it feels to feel like no one really gets what you're going through. But having been through this journey and through the other side, I've learned that you do pull yourself through, that it is worth the wait, that those people who might judge you based on appearance, they're really not great, they're really not worth getting to know, even though that can feel unfair at times. It really matters what you think and feel about yourself. You deserve to have the support that you need, and you need to have whatever's right for you to pull yourself through. But that ultimately you can accept and love your cleft without it needing to define you. But that you probably do need to accept and love your cleft to be able to accept and love your whole self. I'm not saying that I never have a day where I, feel a bit self-conscious. Of course I do. But I now have the self-confidence to know that I'm okay, that I'm accepted, that I'm different, but that doesn't mean I'm isolated, that I was born with a cleft, but that's not bad. And however you ride your cleft roller coaster, just make sure, that through the ups and downs, you have people around you who love you and are ready to support you with whatever you need. And that ultimately, your cleft is just one part of you, and you can own it and then get on with the ride of your life. So thank you so much for listening, and if you'd like to know more about my cleft journey, please visit my website, which is bestcleft.com. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Zeb Carabello, and I appreciate you having me here to speak to CleftCon. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I am 43 years old. I was born with a unilateral cleft lip and palate. I spent most of my life in Colorado and grew up here. Throughout the years, I had about 15 surgeries from about age 3 months. And I think I had my last one at about age 20. And those surgeries were all various surgeries to repair my cleft lip or palate. And today I just want to tell you a little bit about my cleft journey. I'm also the father of my son Luca, who is 9 years old and has a bilateral cleft lip and palate. Luca was born in 2012, and he's a fourth grader now. And I also have an 11-year-old daughter, Maggie, who was born without a cleft of any sort. Growing up in kind of suburban Denver, essentially is where I grew up in the late 70s, 1980s. I was really the only one I knew with the cleft. Of course, this is before the internet. So the world was kind of much smaller then. But I was pretty lucky to grow up with a lot of family around and a lot of close friends. We're overall, I had a very positive childhood experience. Yet, it was definitely clear for me, to me right away, that I was different, quote unquote. And I think probably a lot of it started with speech and people not really being able to understand me, people outside my family not really being able to understand me a lot of times when we spoke or asking me to repeat myself. Of course, I got questions when I was a kid, playing at the playground or whatever at the park. Hey, what's wrong with your lip? What's wrong with your nose? Why you have a scar on your face? Things like that. I think like a lot of people with clefts, depending on my mood. And maybe even the day of the week, I had different answers, anywhere from being very educational to letting them know, what a cleft was, and then some days being more in the mood to say, yeah, I got attacked by a bear. You better get away from me or something like that if I was in the mood for that. I think a lot of us with clefts understand that that piece. Um, a big shift in my cleft journey came when I was probably, I don't know, in my low 20s, 23 to 24. I'd been working as a newspaper reporter and journalist for a few years. I decided to go back to school and get my teaching license and master's degree, and I had to take a linguistics class. And part of an assignment for a class was to look into one option was speech therapy. And so I chose to go to the Children's Hospital Colorado Cleft Clinic and observe some of their speech therapy. And that's where I met a woman named Jamie Eidelberg, who runs the Cleft Clinic and still does today for Children's Hospital Colorado. Jamie let me know about an amazing camp they had through Children's Hospital just for kids with clefts. Once a year, they take about 15 to 20 kids up to Breckenridge, Colorado, in the mountains here, kids who had clefts, and they have a several-day camp just for those kids. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world because myself, growing up, not really knowing anyone who had a cleft, I thought it was just a great opportunity for those kids to get to spend time with others, to know they're not alone. Jamie asked me to come speak at that camp and kind of like today, talk about my journey. And my that first year I went, it was just very powerful for me, probably more than even the kids. But I really talked about my narrative of for the first many years of my life, I regretted having a cleft. Why do I have to do these surgeries? Why do you have speech therapy? Why am I different? Why you have to answer these questions, right? It's hard, like most people with clefts do you feel that way, especially early on. But my main message is that at some point it changes, and my journey evolved, and it definitely the older I got, the easier it got to have a cleft, and eventually I really became grateful and thankful that I was born with a cleft. I realized it made me who I am. It made me unique. It made me strong, and all these great attributes that other people out there with clefts share. And so, that's really my main message to the young people with clefts is just knowing that it does get easier the older you get, and there will be a day. I can't tell you when that day is exactly, but there will be a day where you're very grateful for being unique, different, and part of what I call really brotherhood and sisterhood all around the world of people with clefts who we shine with all of our attributes we have. Um, one organization that kind of shot off of this work was called Face to Face Colorado. And that was a local nonprofit. A few local adults with clefts actually started. My wife Megan and I were on the original board for Face to Face Colorado. And the main idea is just providing a few events each year for in the Denver area, families of those with clefts and kids with clefts to connect and just kind of network and be a support network for each other. It's been very successful. It's growing a ton, and was very proud to be part of that board. And it's really meant a lot, especially even for my son Luca, to really be around a bunch of other kids with clefts for a couple days a year. That's kind of my journey. A cleft does not define me at all yet. I do think the cleft has made me who I am in a lot of ways, and I think it's made me a better and stronger person. And now sitting here at 43 years old, as a high school teacher who hangs out with teenagers all day, etc. I really see the uniqueness of a cleft as an attribute, I'm also happy and optimistic that I feel like our society has actually come a long way in really celebrating and recognizing differences as well. And so I'm really proud that Smile Train's having this Cleft conference again. I know I really enjoyed it last year, and I think any way we can connect and tell our stories and talk about our journeys with the Cleft community is definitely a positive overall. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to answering some questions.
I am Lindsay Grenner. I am a mom to a cleft-affected child. Her name is Emerson, and she is 5 years old. She was born with a bilateral cleft lip and palate. We found out about her cleft on a very normal April day as I was dropping my son off at preschool. I got a call from my doctor who said that some of my blood work had come back showing signs of possible spina bifida. So we quickly made an appointment at a maternal fetal medicine doctor and went for a high-risk ultrasound. And there we found out that everything was okay with her organs and her spine. But we did at that appointment find out that she had a bilateral cleft lip and palate, which came as a complete shock to us, as nobody in either one of our families had a cleft. And I don't think either one of us remembered ever meeting anyone or knowing anyone that was cleft affected at that point. So it was a pretty scary time for us to try to make sense of what was going on and to learn and educate ourselves more about her cleft, and so that we could prepare for when she was born and the journey that we were going to be on 20 weeks later when she arrived. I think the hardest time was the first year. The first year is filled with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of uncertainties, which I found to be the scariest part. Truthfully, once she was born, considering the severity of her cleft, she did not have feeding issues. She did not have to go to the NICU. We were discharged a day later, just like with my other children. So that gave me a lot of hope. But I would say the following 3 months were really challenging, filled with a lot of ear infections. And we went down the route of doing NAM and taping. And that was a very frustrating time that just required a lot of patience and a lot of, willpower to keep going and to stick with it. So I'd say the first 3 months were the most difficult. After that, time was spaced a little bit further apart between procedures. And so Emmy had her palate repair at 1 year old. And after that, I'd say the challenge is to not let each upcoming surgery kind of rule your world. We try to not think about them so much until they're really upon us. She does do speech twice a week. So it is time consuming and it is a financial burden for sure. It's something that you have to figure out, and deal with insurance is always a headache. But, other than having her speech twice a week, I would say we don't really think about her cleft that much anymore. But the biggest challenge I would say is to mentally not let the number of procedures that are going to happen or might happen in the future kind of taunt you or worry you, and to sort of push them off to the side until you reach them. I chose pretty early on to share our story publicly with friends and family, and also on social media. When Emerson was born, I posted her picture on Facebook, just like I did with my other children. And I was really blown away by the amount of support and kind words that we received back, and sort of the power and the push that gave us to face each obstacle as it came. It really was beneficial to me personally. And so I've always wanted to share that hope and that peace with other parents who are going through the same thing, just to share our journey and what we've been through. I think can bring a lot of hope to people at a very dark and hard time. So I was really excited to share this fundraiser with our family and friends, in hopes that they would allow children who don't have the medical resources that we have right at our doorstep, or the funds needed to pay for the best doctors in the world. I wanted to share that opportunity with other people and children that don't have that right at their doorstep. And I think Smile Train does a great job of doing that, and bringing really great medical care to children and families that wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to have that. The Cleft community has been a huge source of hope and peace, as I said, to my family. Early on, I met a woman who brought her 9-month-old daughter to my house and brought me a bag full of specialty bottles when I was 20 weeks pregnant with Emmy. And that kind of showed the power of just having social media and the community right at your doorstep. These people that you might not otherwise know, walked into your house and made you feel okay about the situation that you were about to face. So I think sharing our journeys with one another can help people get through a hard time, and say it's going to be okay. And I also think just taking one step at a time, one day at a time, in those early days where, every day kind of seems long and hard and filled with obstacles. If you just take it one day at a time, or if you're at the point we're at where there might be a surgery a year or a surgery every other year, just taking it one surgery at a time really helps to lessen the load that you feel like you're carrying. And it helps to, I think honor the Cleft journey, and to let your child know that it is part of their journey and something that they, should be proud to share. But also that it shouldn't be something that defines them by any means. They are awesome, resilient, strong people that can make it through this bump in the road and this journey, although it may be long. Is something that they can definitely handle and overcome as the time goes on.